What do you want?
Your father owes me a debt, and I have come to collect it. I love you.
I love you too.
How does a woman go from defending her father against the most dangerous mafia boss in Seoul to becoming the only woman he would risk everything to protect? It all started with a debt. One impossible choice. A marriage that changed both of their lives forever. Neither of them expected what came next. This is their story. Stay with me. Because this is not a love story that starts gently. This one starts at the door. Subscribe and hit that bell. Because this channel tells the kind of stories that stay with you long after the video ends. Let's get into it. Serena had learned early in life that the world did not come with warnings. Things simply happened. Without announcement, without apology, without giving you enough time to prepare. And the only thing you could do was stand in the middle of whatever arrived and decide what kind of person you were going to be while it was happening. She was 28 years old, and she had been standing in the middle of things her entire life. She worked 2 jobs. A morning shift at a small medical clinic handling administrative work, and an evening shift at a restaurant 3 nights a week. She sent money to her father every month without fail. She lived in a modest apartment with exactly enough of everything and nothing extra. She asked for nothing from anyone, and she had built a quiet, dignified life out of that philosophy. Then one Thursday evening her father called. His voice was the wrong kind of calm. The kind that comes not from peace, but from a man who has run out of the energy it takes to panic. "I need to tell you something," he said, "and I need you to hear me out before you say anything." She sat down slowly on the edge of her bed. James had borrowed money. Not a small amount. The kind of amount that a man borrows when he is desperate and not thinking clearly, from the kind of people who present themselves as a solution and reveal themselves as something else entirely once the money has changed hands. He had borrowed it 2 years ago when his health had deteriorated and the medical bills had become something he could not face asking Serena to carry. He had intended to pay it back. He had tried to pay it back. But interest in these arrangements does not work the way interest works in banks. "How much?" Serena asked. He told her. The number sat in the air between them on the phone line like something physical. "Dad," she said carefully. "Who are these people?" The silence before he answered told her everything she needed to know before he said a word. That same night. As if the universe had been waiting for her to find out before it sent the next thing. There was a knock at her father's door. Serena was already there. She had driven straight to him after the phone call, not trusting the distance between them with something this size. She opened the door. The man standing on the other side was not what she expected. She did not know exactly what she had expected. Something louder, perhaps, something that announced its danger more obviously. But Kai was none of those things. He was simply still. Tall. Broad-shouldered, dark suit. Eyes that moved over the doorway once, and then settled on her face with the particular patience of someone who has never once in his life needed to hurry. Behind him, at a respectful distance, stood another man. Lean, watchful, saying nothing. "I am looking for James," Kai said. His voice was low and even, the kind of voice that did not need volume to carry weight. "He is not available," Serena said. Something moved in Kai's expression. Not surprise exactly, more like recalibration. "You are his daughter," he said. It was not a question. "I am," she said. "And whatever you came here to say to him you can say to me." For a long moment, Kai simply looked at her. The man behind him shifted slightly. Kai did not move at all. Then he said, "May I come in?" It was not phrased as a question either. Serena held the door open and stepped aside. They sat in her father's small living room, Kai on one side, Serena beside her father on the other. The weight of the number James had named on the phone sitting between all of them like a fourth person in the room. Kai laid it out simply and without cruelty. The debt. The timeline. The consequences of the timeline not being met. He did not raise his voice. He did not make threats that required decoration. He simply stated what was real in the way that people state things when they have never needed to dress reality up to make it frightening. James's hands were shaking on his knees. Serena watched Kai's eyes move to her father's hands, then back to her face. "We need more time," she said. "Time is the one thing this arrangement does not offer," Kai said. "Then what does it offer?" she asked. He looked at her for a long moment. That same still, unhurried look that she was already beginning to understand was simply how he existed in the world. "There is one alternative," he said carefully. "It is unconventional. You will likely refuse it." "Tell me," she said. "Marry me," he said simply. "The debt is cleared. Your father is free. No further contact from my organization. Ever." The room went completely silent. James made a sound, somewhere between a protest and a broken exhale. Serena did not look at her father. She kept her eyes on Kai. "Why?" she asked. "That is not part of the offer," he said. "It is part of my answer," she said. He held her gaze for a moment longer than anyone had held it in a very long time. "I need a wife," he said finally. "You need a solution. This is both." He stood, buttoned his jacket, and placed a card on the coffee table between them. 24 hours, he said. Then the original terms apply. He walked out. The other man followed. The door closed behind them both with a quiet click that somehow landed louder than a slam. Serena sat in the silence her father's living room for a long time after that. Her father's breathing unsteady beside her. The card sitting on the coffee table between them. The number still hanging in the air. 24 hours. She picked up the card. And she already knew. Somewhere in the part of herself she was not ready to examine yet. What her answer was going to be. Serena did not sleep that night. She sat in her father's kitchen long after James had finally drifted into an exhausted, restless sleep. Her hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had gone cold an hour ago, turning the card over and over between her fingers like it might eventually reveal something it was hiding. She was not a woman who made decisions emotionally. She never had been. Life had taught her early that emotion was a luxury you paid for later, and she had learned to think first. Feel later. Always. So she laid it out the way she laid everything out. Plainly, without sentiment, one side against the other. On one side, everything she knew about men like Kai, the world they operated in, the things that world required of the people inside it. The fact that walking through that door voluntarily was a different thing entirely from having it forced open. On the other side, her father's hands shaking on his knees. The sound his breathing made when Kai had been in the room. The number. The timeline. The consequences of the timeline not being met. By the time the sun came up over the city, she had not resolved anything so much as she had simply run out of road in the other direction. She picked up her phone. She dialed the number on the card. It rang once. Yes, Kai said. Not hello. Just yes. As if he had been waiting and had no interest in pretending otherwise. One condition, Serena said. A pause. Brief, but she noticed it. Go on, he said. My father is completely out of it, she said. Not reduced debt. Not managed. Out. Completely. Whatever he owes, whatever interest has accumulated, whatever your organization believes it is owed. Gone. Permanently. In writing. Before I sign anything. Another pause. Longer this time. Agreed, Kai said. Then my answer is yes, she said. She hung up before he could say anything else. The paperwork arrived that same afternoon. Delivered by the man she would later learn was called Shin, who handed her a sealed envelope without making eye contact and left without a word. Inside was a document clearing her father's debt in full, signed and stamped with a formality that felt almost absurd given the circumstances. And beneath it, a second document, a marriage contract. Serena read every line of both documents twice. Then she signed where indicated, sealed the envelope, and called Shin's number, which had been written at the bottom of the covering note, to tell him it was ready for collection. She did not call her father until after it was done. James cried. She had expected that. What she had not expected was what he said through the tears. "Serena, you didn't have to." "I know," she said simply. "I wanted to." It was not entirely true. But it was true enough for now. The wedding happened 4 days later. No guests. No flowers. No celebration of any kind. A small private room in a government building. A registrar who asked the required questions with the practiced efficiency of someone who had long ago stopped reading the room, and 2 witnesses Serena had never seen before and would never see again. Kai stood beside her in a black suit that fit him the way expensive things fit people who have never had to think about the cost. He answered the registrar's questions in a clear, even voice. He did not look at her during the ceremony except once. When she stumbled slightly over the words of the formal response, not from nerves, but from the sudden acute awareness of what she was actually saying out loud, he looked at her then, just briefly, and something in his expression shifted, so slightly that she almost missed it. Before settling back into its usual unreadable stillness, the registrar pronounced them married. Kai placed the ring on her finger, a simple band, understated, nothing that announced itself. With the careful, deliberate movement of a man completing a task he has decided to complete properly regardless of the circumstances around it. She looked down at her hand afterward and felt something she could not immediately name sitting quietly in her chest. They rode to the penthouse in silence. Shin drove. The city moved past the windows of the car, Seoul in the late afternoon, golden and indifferent, going about its business while hers had just changed completely. The penthouse was on the 43rd floor, floor-to-ceiling windows. City spread out below like something from a film. Furniture that was expensive and impersonal in equal measure. The kind of space that had been designed for impressiveness rather than living. Kai showed her to a room. Her room, separate from his, at the opposite end of a long corridor, and told her simply that the household staff would show her anything she needed. He asked once if she was hungry. She said no. He nodded and walked away down the corridor toward his own end of the penthouse, and she stood in the doorway of her room with her one bag at her feet and looked around at the most expensive space she had ever stood in and felt completely, absolutely alone. She set her bag down on the floor, walked to the window, looked out at Seoul glittering 43 floors below her. She had walked in with her walls up and her heart out of it. She had told herself this was a transaction and she intended to treat it like one. She had made her decision with her head and she was going to live with it the same way. But standing at that window in the last light of the day, in a ring she hadn't chosen, in a life she hadn't planned, in a city that didn't know her name, something very small and very honest moved through her before she could stop it. She pressed her hand flat against the cold glass. And she made herself one promise. Whatever happened inside these walls, whatever this arrangement became or didn't become, she was going to remain exactly who she was when she walked into it. Nobody, not this world, not this penthouse, and not the unreadable man at the other end of this corridor, was going to take that from her. The first week was the strangest thing Serena had ever lived through. Not because anything dramatic happened. Quite the opposite. The penthouse was quiet in a way that felt almost deliberate, like silence that had been carefully maintained for so long it had become the default setting of the entire space. Staff moved through it efficiently and without sound. Doors opened and closed without slamming. Even the city outside the floor-to-ceiling windows seemed muted from 43 floors up. All light and no noise, like watching the world through glass that filtered out everything difficult. Kai moved through his own home like a man who had learned to take up exactly the space he needed, and no more. He left early. He came back late. He did not explain his schedule or ask about hers. He did not invade her space or ignore her in a way that felt pointed. He simply existed at his end of the penthouse with the same contained stillness he had brought to her father's doorway that first night and left her end of it entirely to her. It should have been uncomfortable. In many ways it was. But it was also. And Serena was not ready to examine this too closely. strangely respectful in a way she had not anticipated from a man like him. She spent the first few days learning the penthouse the way she learned everything. Methodically, without fuss. Which rooms were used and which were not. Where the kitchen was stocked and what it was stocked with. Which members of staff handled what, and who to go to for which things. She had always been good at understanding the architecture of a space. The way things were organized told you more about the person who organized them than almost anything else. The penthouse told her that Kai lived almost entirely in 3 rooms. His office, his bedroom, and occasionally the main living area late at night, when he thought no one was awake. Everything else was maintained with perfect precision and never used. It was the home of a man who had everything and inhabited almost none of it. She found that more interesting than she wanted to. It was the photograph that started it. She had walked past his office door one morning. It was slightly open, which she had learned was unusual, and through the gap she saw it on the desk. A silver, framed photograph. A younger version of Kai, maybe 19 or 20, standing beside an older Korean man with the same jaw and the same eyes, and a hand resting on young Kai's shoulder with the particular weight of a man who is trying to pass something down. She stood in the corridor for a moment longer than she should have. Then she kept walking. But it stayed with her. That image of a younger Kai standing next to someone who was clearly his father, both of them looking at the camera with the same expression. Not quite smiling. Not quite not smiling. Something in between that looked like 2 people who understood each other completely, and were not sure whether that was a gift or a burden. She asked about it that evening. They had ended up in the kitchen at the same time. An accident of timing that had been happening more frequently as the days passed, neither of them acknowledging that it kept happening. Kai was standing at the counter with a glass of water, jacket off, sleeves pushed up, which was the most undone she had ever seen him look. She was making tea. "The photograph on your desk," she said without preamble. "Who is he?" Kai looked at her for a moment. "My father," he said. "He built the organization," she said. Not a question. She had pieced that much together from things she had observed without being told. "Yes," Kai said. "And then it destroyed him," she said quietly, repeating the words he had said to her that first night, without fully meaning to. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't immediately read. "You remembered that," he said. "I remember most things," she said. He was quiet for a moment, looking down at the glass in his hand. He built it because he believed it was the only way to protect the people he loved, Kai said slowly, and by the time he understood what it had cost him, it was too late to build anything else. He paused. He died inside it. In every way that matters. The kitchen was very quiet. Serena looked at him. This man who had come to her father's door with the weight of an organization behind him, and the stillness of someone who had learned very early that showing what you felt was a liability, and understood something she hadn't before. He hadn't just inherited this world. He was trapped inside it, the same way his father had been, doing the only things he knew how to do, carrying the guilt of all of it in the one place he thought nobody could see. Somewhere behind those eyes that gave away nothing and missed nothing simultaneously. She didn't say any of that. She finished making her tea, picked up her cup, and said simply, "Thank you for telling me." She walked out of the kitchen, and Kai stood at the counter for a long time after she left, looking at the space where she had been standing, turning something over in his mind that he didn't yet have words for. The days continued to pass. Slowly, without announcement, things shifted between them. The way things shift when 2 people share a space long enough, and are both honest enough to stop pretending the other person isn't there. Serena started leaving the kitchen light on when she went to bed, because she had noticed Kai came in late and moved around in the dark. She didn't tell him she had done it. He never mentioned it. But she noticed he stopped moving around in the dark. Kai started leaving her schedule. Appointments, staff contacts, anything she might need to navigate the penthouse and the world attached to it, on the kitchen counter in the morning before he left. Not explained, not discussed, just there. She read everything without comment. Shin, who had initially regarded her with the blank watchfulness of a man reserving judgment indefinitely, began nodding at her in the corridor, which she understood, given his general economy of expression, was essentially the equivalent of a warm welcome. One evening, a Thursday, 3 weeks into the arrangement, Kai came home to find Serena in the kitchen attempting a recipe she had found in a cookbook she had pulled from the shelf in the living room. She had not expected him back for another 2 hours. She had made enough for one. He stood in the kitchen doorway and looked at what she was making. "That is my mother's recipe," he said quietly. She looked up from the pan. "I didn't know that." "I know," he said. He was quiet for a moment. "She used to make it on Thursdays." Serena looked at him. Then she reached into the cabinet above the stove and got a second bowl without saying anything. They ate together at the kitchen counter. The first time they had eaten a meal in the same space since the wedding. Not talking much. Not needing to. The city glittering through the windows, the kitchen warm and quiet around them. Two people sitting with the unexpected ordinariness of a Thursday evening meal in a life neither of them had planned. When they were finished, Kai washed both bowls without being asked. Serena watched him do it and felt the wall she had promised herself she would maintain shift. Just slightly, just enough to notice. In a way that made her set her cup down on the counter and look out the window at Seoul for a long time without speaking. It was not dramatic. It was not a moment that announced itself. But it was the moment. She would understand later, looking back, when the transaction started becoming something else entirely. Nobody tells you what it feels like when your walls come down. You expect it to be dramatic, a single moment, a confession, something that announces itself clearly enough that you can point to it afterward and say, "There, that was the thing that changed everything." But it is never like that. Not really. It happens the way Seoul changes between seasons. So gradually that one day you simply look up and realize the temperature is different, and you cannot say exactly when it shifted. For Serena, it happened in pieces. It happened in the way Kai listened when she spoke. Not waiting for his turn, not half present, but actually listening in the complete and slightly unsettling way of someone who processes everything and discards nothing. She had not been listened to like that in a very long time, and she had forgotten what it felt like to have someone's full attention without having to earn it first. It happened in the way he handled a situation she witnessed one afternoon. A member of his staff, a young woman who had made an error that in another organization might have cost her significantly, standing in Kai's office doorway with her hands clasped tightly in front of her waiting for a verdict. Serena had passed the doorway at that moment and caught the tail end of the exchange. Kai's voice was measured and direct. He identified the error clearly, without cruelty, explained what needed to change, and dismissed her without punishment. The young woman walked out with her shoulders dropped in relief rather than shame. Serena had kept walking down the corridor and said nothing about it, but she thought about it for the rest of the day. It happened in the way he noticed things. Small things. The things people only notice when they are actually paying attention. He noticed when she was tired before she said so. He noticed when something was bothering her even when she had arranged her face into its usual composure. He never asked directly. He was not a man who pushed, but he would do something small and practical that addressed the thing without requiring her to name it. Leave her tea, already made in the morning when she had slept badly. Reroute a staff meeting that had been scheduled in the main living area when she was working quietly at the table. Tell Shin to have the car ready without Serena having to ask, on the afternoons when she visited her father. She noticed all of it. She told herself she was simply observant. That noticing was not the same as feeling. That keeping track of the things a person did was not the same as caring about the person doing them. She was a very good liar when she needed to be. But she was also honest enough. When she was alone and quiet and Seoul was dark outside the window, to know the difference between observing something and being moved by it. The evening it became undeniable was a Wednesday. Kai came home later than usual, past midnight, which even for him was unusual. Serena had been awake, not because she was waiting for him, but Because sleep had not come, and the book she was reading had stopped holding her attention an hour earlier. She heard the elevator. She heard his footsteps in the corridor, slower than usual, heavier somehow. She got up. She found him in the kitchen, standing at the counter with both hands pressed flat on the surface, head bowed, jacket still on. He had not poured anything. He had not turned on the overhead light. Just the small light above the stove, which she had left on as she always did now. She stood in the doorway for a moment. Then she went to the cabinet and filled the kettle and turned it on without asking. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there with his hands on the counter and his head bowed, and something sitting on his shoulders that was too heavy to be just one night's worth of weight. The kettle boiled. She made 2 cups. She set one beside his hand on the counter and took hers to the small table at the side of the kitchen and sat down. Close enough to be present, far enough to give him the space to decide what he needed. He stood for another minute. Then he picked up the cup. Then he came and sat across from her at the small table. Something he had never done before. Always taking the counter when they shared the kitchen. Always maintaining that extra few feet of practical distance. He sat across from her and wrapped both hands around the cup and looked at it. "I lost someone tonight," he said quietly. "Someone who worked for me. Who had worked for me for 11 years. Serena said nothing. She listened the way he always listened to her, completely. "He had a daughter," Kai said. 7 years old. He used to show me photographs on his phone." A pause. He was proud of her in the specific way that people are proud of the things they believe are the best thing they ever did. The kitchen was very quiet. "I am sorry," Serena said, simply and without decoration, "because some things don't need anything added to them." Kai looked up from his cup. He looked at her across the small table in the low, warm light of the kitchen, and for one unguarded moment, the only one she had ever seen from him, the stillness dropped entirely. Just for a second. Just long enough for her to see what was underneath it. Grief. Guilt. The particular exhaustion of a man who has been carrying the weight of other people's safety for so long he has forgotten what it felt like before he picked it up. Then the stillness came back. Quietly, like a door closing. But she had seen it. And he knew she had seen it. And neither of them looked away. "You don't have to be alone in this," she said quietly. "Whatever this is. You don't have to carry all of it by yourself all of the time." He looked at her for a long moment. "I have been alone in it for a very long time," he said. "I know," she said. "I can tell." Something moved across his face that she had no name for yet. He reached across the small table. Slowly, carefully, like a man who is not used to reaching toward things, and his hand came to rest over hers on the table. Not gripping. Just resting, warm and still and certain. Neither of them moved for a long time after that. Outside, Seoul glittered on. 43 floors below, indifferent and unhurried as always. Inside the kitchen, the light above the stove burned steadily in the dark. And Serena sat across from the most dangerous man she had ever met with his hand over hers on a small kitchen table and felt the last of the wall she had promised herself she would keep. The one she had been so careful about, so deliberate about, so absolutely certain about, dissolve quietly and completely into the warm air between them. She didn't try to stop it. She wasn't sure anymore that she wanted to. It arrived on a Monday morning. Serena was alone in the penthouse. Kai had left before she woke up, which happened sometimes, the kind of early that suggested he had not slept at all. She had made her own tea, sat at the kitchen table with the city spread out golden and unhurried below her, and was working through administrative files she had taken on remotely from the clinic. Keeping herself useful, keeping herself tethered to the version of her life that existed before all of this, the version that still felt fully hers. Her personal phone buzzed on the table beside her. A message. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. She received unknown numbers occasionally. Wrong numbers, spam, the occasional work-related contact who hadn't been saved yet. But something made her pick it up. She read it once. Then she set the phone face down on the table very carefully and sat completely still for a long time. The message was not long. It did not need to be. It said simply that the people who sent it knew who she was, where she came from, and what she meant to Kai, which was more than she had fully admitted to herself yet. It said they had been watching the penthouse for 3 weeks. It said that the fastest way to break the most unbreakable man in Seoul was to remove the thing he had decided he could not lose. And it said, with a specificity that made her blood run cold, that they already knew her father's address. Serena sat with the message for a long time. She was not a woman who panicked. Panic had never been available to her as a luxury. Her life had required too much steadiness for too long to leave room for it. But she was also not a woman who pretended things were not what they were. And what this was, plainly, without interpretation, was a direct and specific threat from people who had done their research and intended to use what they found. She picked the phone back up. She read the message again. Then she did something that surprised even herself. She did not call her father first. She did not call anyone from her old life. She sat with the phone in her hand and thought about Kai's hand over hers on the kitchen table 3 nights ago, and the way he had looked at her in that unguarded moment when the stillness had dropped and she had seen everything underneath it. And she thought about what he had said that first night, standing in her father's living room. Nobody touches what is mine. She had not known what to make of it then. She had filed it away as the language of a man who thought about people as possessions. The kind of statement that should have made her uncomfortable. But sitting here now with a threat on her phone and her father's address in the hands of people she had never met, she understood it differently. It was not possession. It was protection. She picked up the phone and called Kai. He answered on the first ring. Something happened, she said. A pause, brief, sharp. Are you in the penthouse? He asked. Yes, she said. Don't leave, he said. I am already on my way. He was there in 20 minutes. She had not asked how he managed that. The penthouse was not close to where his morning had taken him, and 20 minutes was not enough time under normal circumstances. She had simply opened the door when he knocked and handed him her phone with the message still open on the screen. He read it. She watched his face while he read it, looking for the things she had learned to look for in the weeks since she had moved into his world. The small tells that existed beneath the stillness. She found it in his jaw, the way it tightened once, briefly, before he controlled it back into stillness. He handed the phone back to her. The Beck family, he said quietly, to himself as much as to her. You know who sent this, she said. Yes, he said. Then you know what they want, she said. They want me to make a mistake, he said. Fear makes people make mistakes. That is what this is designed to do. He looked at her directly. Are you afraid? She considered the question honestly, the way she considered everything. Of them, she said. Yes. Appropriately. A pause. Of you handling it? No. Something moved in his expression. My father, she said. He needs to be somewhere safe immediately. That is the first thing. Already handled, Kai said. He pulled out his own phone and turned the screen toward her. A message to Shin, sent from the car on the way over, with her father's address and 2 words. Move him. She looked at the message. Then at Kai. You thought of him before I asked, she said. You would have asked, he said simply. So I thought of him first. Serena looked at this man, standing in the middle of the penthouse living room in his black suit with her phone in his hand, and the weight of what was coming already being calculated somewhere behind those still, unreadable eyes, and felt something settle in her chest. Not comfort exactly. Something steadier than comfort. Something that felt like the specific relief of understanding that you are not carrying something alone. What happens now? She asked. Kai put his own phone away. He looked at her for a long moment. The kind of look she had come to understand meant he was deciding how much to say and how directly to say it. I am going to put protection around you and your father that the Beck family cannot reach through, he said. And then I am going to remove their ability to make threats like this one entirely. Remove how? She asked. That part, he said carefully, is better that you don't know in detail. She held his gaze. "Are you going to be safe?" The question surprised him. She could see it. The very slight shift in his expression. The pause that was a fraction too long before he answered. "That is not usually the question people ask me," he said. "I am asking it," she said. He looked at her for a moment longer. "I will be careful," he said. It was not a yes. They both knew that. But it was the most honest answer he had, and she understood enough about him now to know the difference between deflection and truth. She nodded slowly. He turned toward the door. Back to whatever the next hours required of him. Back to the world he had been navigating alone for longer than anyone should have to. "Kai," she said. He stopped. Turned back. She crossed the room. 3 steps. Unhurried. And before he could recalibrate or prepare, or put the stillness back in place, she reached up and held his face in both hands and looked at him directly the way she looked at everything. Without flinching, without apology, without leaving anything out. "Come back," she said quietly. He looked at her with those eyes that gave away nothing and missed nothing. Then he covered her hands with his. The same way he had covered her hand on the kitchen table. Warm and still and certain. And held them there for a moment. "I will come back," he said. He meant it. She could hear it. The difference between a thing said to reassure and a thing said because it is simply true. He left. She stood in the penthouse living room alone. The city spread out below her through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and listened to the elevator doors close. Then she went back to the kitchen table, sat down, and picked up her tea. Cold now, long past drinking, and held it in both hands anyway. And she waited. He came back at 2 in the morning. Serena was still awake. She had not planned to wait up. She had told herself she would sleep, had gone through the motions of it, had lain in the dark in her room at her end of the penthouse corridor and stared at the ceiling with the particular wakefulness of someone whose body understands that rest is not yet available. She heard the elevator. She heard his footsteps in the corridor. Steady, unhurried. The same deliberate pace she had memorized over weeks without meaning to. She got up. She found him in the kitchen, standing at the counter, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, both hands pressed flat on the surface the way they had been that Wednesday night when he had come home carrying something too heavy for one person. But this time was different. This time when he looked up and found her in the doorway, his expression was not closed. It was tired. Deeply, completely tired in the way of someone who has spent everything they had and is only now allowing themselves to feel the cost of it. But underneath the tiredness was something else. Relief. She crossed the kitchen without a word and stood beside him at the counter. Close enough that their arms were almost touching, and filled the kettle and turned it on. He watched her do it. "Your father is safe," he said quietly. "He has been moved somewhere comfortable. Shin is with him personally. He will stay until this is fully resolved." "Thank you," she said. "The Beck family," he continued, "has been addressed. Their ability to make threats of this nature has been significantly curtailed. They will not contact you again." She nodded slowly, keeping her eyes on the kettle. "And you?" she asked. "Are you hurt?" A pause. "No," he said. She turned and looked at him. The full direct look she gave everything that mattered. The one that didn't leave room for performance or deflection. He held it. "I am not hurt," he said again. More quietly this time, as if saying it to himself as much as to her. She turned back to the kettle, made 2 cups, set one beside his hand. They stood at the counter together in the low, warm light of the kitchen. The light she had started leaving on for him weeks ago without either of them ever acknowledging it. And drank their tea in the particular silence of 2 people who have moved beyond the need to fill every quiet space between them. After a while, Kai set his cup down and turned to look at her. "Why did you wait up?" he asked. She considered giving him the practical answer. That she hadn't been able to sleep, that it was coincidence, that she had simply been awake. All of it was technically true. None of it was the real answer. "Because I told you to come back," she said simply. "And I wanted to be there when you did." He looked at her for a long time. Then he reached out. Slowly, the way he always moved. The way that gave her every opportunity to decide what she wanted. And tucked a loose strand of her hair back from her face with one careful hand. She didn't move away. His hand stayed at her face. Fingertips just barely resting against her jaw. And neither of them spoke, and the city burned quietly below them through the windows, and the kitchen was very warm and very still. "Serena," he said. Her name in his mouth sounded different than it did anywhere else. More careful, like something he was handling with intention. "I know," she said softly. She did know. She had known for longer than she had been willing to say. He leaned in slowly, the way he did everything, unhurried, deliberate, completely certain, and kissed her. Quiet and careful at first, like a question being asked. Then she answered it, and it was no longer quiet or careful, but it was still completely certain. The way things are certain, when they have been building for long enough that by the time they arrive they feel less like a beginning and more like an acknowledgement of something that was already true. When they finally pulled apart, she kept her eyes closed for a moment. Just a moment. Before she opened them and found him looking at her with an expression she had never seen on his face before. Unguarded. Completely and entirely unguarded. No stillness. No distance. Just him. The man underneath all of it, the one she had been catching glimpses of since a Wednesday night over tea and a Thursday evening over her mother's recipe, and every small deliberate thing he had done in the weeks between then and now. "I did not expect you," he said quietly. "When I came to your father's door, I did not expect any of this." "Neither did I," she said. He almost smiled. It was the closest thing to a smile she had seen from him, and it changed his face entirely. Made him look younger, lighter, like the 19-year-old in the photograph standing next to his father before the weight of everything had settled permanently onto his shoulders. She thought, "I want to see that more. I want to be the reason for that more." She didn't say it, but she thought it clearly and without apology, and that was its own kind of arrival. 3 days passed. 3 days of something new and careful and real being built in the space between two people who had both spent too long being alone inside their own lives to fully trust what they were building yet. But were building it anyway. Her father was safe. Shin sent updates twice daily. James sounded better than he had in months. Lighter, the guilt of the debt finally lifted. The fear finally gone. He asked about Kai once, carefully, in the way of a father trying to calibrate something he was not sure he had the right to ask about. "He is. Not what I expected," Serena told him. "Is that good?" her father asked. She thought about the kitchen light. The car ready without asking. The second bowl. The hand over hers on the table. The way he had moved between her and every threat that came through that door without being asked. "Yes," she said. "That is good." Then on the fourth morning Shin appeared at the penthouse door. Serena opened it. Kai was in his office, and Shin looked at her with an expression that was different from his usual careful blankness. There was something behind it, something that made her step back from the door without fully understanding why. "I need to speak with him," Shin said quietly. Immediately, she went to get Kai. She waited in the kitchen while they spoke in the office with the door closed. Something that had not happened before, the closed door, the deliberate privacy of it. She sat at the kitchen table and wrapped her hands around her cup and listened to the silence that came through the closed door and told herself it was fine. Then the office door opened. Kai came out alone. He walked down the corridor toward the kitchen. That slow, deliberate walk that she knew now meant he was thinking, calculating, moving through something internally before he surfaced with whatever he had decided. He stood in the kitchen doorway and looked at her. His expression was back to stillness. Fully, completely back. The way it had been that first night at her father's door. Unreadable. Contained. Giving away nothing. That frightened her more than anything the Beck family had sent to her phone. "What happened?" she said. He came into the kitchen and sat down across from her at the small table. The same table. The same 2 chairs. The same low, warm light. But the air between them was different now. "The Beck family," he said carefully, did not act alone. She waited. The directive to target you, he said, did not originate with them. She felt something cold move through her that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. Then who, she said. Kai looked at her across the table for a long moment. That look she now understood meant he was deciding how much to say and how directly to say it. Someone inside my own organization, he said quietly. Someone who has been there for a very long time. Someone I trusted. The kitchen was completely silent. Who? She asked again. Her voice steady, because she was Serena and steadiness was what she did when everything around her was moving. Kai's jaw tightened once, then released. He picked up his phone from the table and turned the screen toward her. On it was a photograph, a surveillance image, slightly grainy, taken without the subject's knowledge. She looked at it for a long moment. Then she looked up at Kai. How long have you known? She asked quietly. Shin confirmed it an hour ago, he said. But I have suspected for longer than I was willing to admit. He put the phone face down on the table between them. This changes things, he said. The threat is not external. It is internal. Which means everything I put in place to protect you. Every wall I built around this penthouse, around your father, around us, was built with someone on the inside already knowing where the doors were. Serena sat with that for a moment. So what happens now? She asked. Kai looked at her across the small kitchen table. In the penthouse that had stopped feeling impersonal, in the life that had stopped feeling like a transaction, with this woman across from him who had walked into his world as a solution to a problem and had quietly, completely, irreversibly become the most important thing in it. Now, he said quietly, I burn it down. He picked up his phone. He made a call. It is time, he said. Finish it. He hung up. The kitchen was silent. Outside Seoul glittered on. Indifferent, unhurried. The way it always was. And inside that penthouse on the 43rd floor, two people sat across from each other at a small kitchen table with the full weight of what was coming settled between them. Knowing that whatever was on the other side of the next few days would either destroy everything they had built or make it the kind of thing that nothing could touch. Neither of them looked away. Who is the traitor inside Kai's organization? What exactly does burning it down cost him? And her? And when the dust finally settles, will what they found in each other survive what they are about to walk through? Part 2 is coming. Make sure you are subscribed and that bell is on, because this story is far from finished.